My name is Shannon Wilkins, and I am the person that has the great pleasure of putting this on every year for Los Angeles County. Our first contestant is from Bassett Unified School District, and she goes to Bassett High School. She is a 12th grader. Please welcome Carolina Sevilla Saravia.
El Olvido by Judith Ortiz Cofer. It is a dangerous thing to forget the climate of your birthplace, to choke out the voices of dead relatives when in dreams they call you by your secret name. It is dangerous to spurn the clothes you were born to wear for the sake of fashion. Dangerous to use weapons and sharp instruments you are not familiar with. Dangerous to disdain the plaster saints before which your mother kneels, pray with embarrassing fervor that you survive in the place you have chosen to live. A bare, cold room with no pictures on the walls. A forgetting place where she fears you will die of loneliness and exposure. Jesus, Maria y Jose, she says, El olvido is a dangerous thing.
Enough by Suzanne Buffum. I am wearing dark glasses inside the house to match my dark mood. I have left all the sugar out of the pie. My rage is a kind of domestic rage. I learned it from my mother, who learned it from her mother before her, and so on. Surely the Greeks had a word for this? Now, surely the Germans do. The more words a person knows to describe her private sufferings, the more distantly she can perceive them. I repeat the names of all the cities I've known and watch an ant drag its crooked shadow home. What does it mean to love the life we've been given, to act well the part that's been cast for us? Wind, light, fire, time, a train whistles through the far hills. One day, I plan to be writing it.
The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years, an angel throng, bewinged, bedight in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they, who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings, invisible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the self-same spot, and much of madness, and more of sin, and horror, the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes, with mortal pangs, the mimes become its food. and seraph sob at vermin fangs, in human gore imbued. Out, out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. Thank you.
I felt a funeral in my brain by Emily Dickinson. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead. Again, then space began to toll, as all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear and eye and silence, some strange race wrecked, solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down and down, and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing then. Thank you.
To Fashion by Elizabeth Moody. Gay fashion, thou goddess, so pleasing, however imperious thy sway, like a mistress, capricious and teasing. Thy slaves, though they murmur, obey. The simple, the wise, and the witty, the learned, the dunce, and the fool, the crooked, straight, ugly, and pretty were the badge of thy whimsical school. Though thy shape be so fickle and changing, that a Proteus thou art to the view, and our taste, so forever deranging, we know not which form to pursue. Yet wave thy frolicsome banners, and hosts of adherents we see. Arts, morals, religion, and manners yield implicit obedience to thee. More despotic than beauty thy power, more than virtue thy rule o'er the mind. Though transient, thy reign as the flower that scatters its leaves to the wind. Ah, while folly thou dealest such measure, no matter how fleeting thy day, be wisdom, dear goddess, have pleasure, then lasting as time be thy stay.
Personal by Tony Hoagland. Don't take it personal, they said. But I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain. And I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy. The most simple-minded of possible responses. The government reminded me of my father, with its deafness and its laws, and the weather reminded me of my mom, with her tropical squalls. Enjoy it while you can, they said, of happiness. Think first, they said, of talk. Get over it, they said, at the school of broken hearts. But I couldn't, and I didn't, and I don't believe in the clean break. I believe in the compound fracture served with a sauce of dirty regret. I believe in saying it all and taking it all back and saying it again for good measure while the air fills up with I'm sorries like wheeling birds and the trees look seasick in the wind. Oh, life, can you blame me for making a scene? You were the yellow caboose, the moon disappearing over a ridge of cloud. I was the dog, chained to some fool's backyard, barking and barking, trying to convince everything else to take it personal, too. Thank you.
America by Claude McKay. Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth, stealing my breath of life, I will confess, I love this cultured hell that tests my youth. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood, giving me strength erect against her hate. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood. Yet, as a rebel fronts a king in state, I stand within her walls with not a shred of terror, malice, not a word of jeer. Darkly I gaze into the days ahead and see her might and granite wonders there, beneath the touch of time's unerring hand, like priceless treasures sinking in the sand. Thank you.
I am offering this poem by Jimmy Santiago Baca. I am offering this poem to you since I have nothing else to give. Keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you, or like a pair of thick socks the cold cannot bite through. I love you. I have nothing else to give you, so it is a pot full of yellow corn to warm your belly in winter. It is a scarf for your head to wear over your hair, to tie up around your face. I love you. Keep it. Treasure this as you would if you were lost, needing direction in the wilderness life becomes when mature. And in the corner of your drawer, tucked away like a cabin or hogan in dense trees, come knocking, and I will answer, give you directions, and let you warm yourself by this fire, rest by this fire, and make you feel safe. I love you. It's all I have to give, and all anyone needs to live, and to go on living inside when the world outside no longer cares if you live or die. Remember, I love you. Thank you.
All right. Enemies by Wendell Berry. If you are not to become a monster, you must care what they think. If you care what they think, how will you not hate them? And so, become a monster of the opposite kind, from where then is love to grow. Love for your enemy. That is the way of liberty from forgiveness. Forgiven, they go. Free of you and you of them. They are to you as sunlight on a green branch. You must not think of them again, except as monsters like yourself, pitiable because unforgiving. forgiving. Thank you.
Personal by Tony Hoagland. Don't take it personal, they said. But I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain. And I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy. The most simple-minded of possible responses. The government reminded me of my father, with its deafness and its laws. And the weather reminded me of my mom, with her tropical squalls. Enjoy it while you can, they said of happiness. Think first, they said of talk. Get over it, they said at the school of broken hearts. But I couldn't, and I didn't, and I don't believe in the clean break. I believe in the compound fracture served with a sauce of dirty regret. I believe in saying it all and taking it all back, and saying it again for good measure while the air fills up with I'm sorries like wheeling birds, and the trees look seasick in the wind. Oh, life! Can you blame me for making a scene? You were that yellow caboose, the moon disappearing over a ridge of cloud. I was the dog chained in some fool's backyard, barking and barking, trying to convince everything else to take it personal too. Thank you.
Movement Song by Audre Lorde. I have studied the tight curls on the back of your neck, moving away from me beyond anger or failure. Your face in the evening schools of longing, through mornings of wish and ripen, we were always saying goodbye. In the blood, in the bone, over coffee, before dashing for elevators going in opposite directions without goodbyes. Do not remember me as a bridge nor a roof, as the maker of legends, nor as a trap door to that world where black and white clericals hang on the edge of beauty in 5 o'clock elevators, twitching their shoulders to avoid other flesh, and now there's someone to speak for them. Moving away from me into tomorrow's morning of wish and ripen, your goodbye is a promise of lightning in the last angel's hand, unwelcome and warning the sands of time have run out against us. We are rewarded by journeys away from each other, into desire, into mornings alone, where excuse and endurance mingle, conceiving decision. Do not remember me as disaster, nor as the keeper of secrets. I am a fellow rider in the cattle cars watching you move slowly out of my bed, saying we cannot waste time, only ourselves.
Cagebird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But the cage bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. the caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
Ways of Talking by Hodgin. We used to like talking about grief. Our journals and letters were packed with losses, complaints, and sorrows. Even if there was no grief, we wouldn't stop lamenting as though longing for the charm of a distressed face. Then, we couldn't help expressing grief. So many things descended without warning. Labor wasted, loves lost, houses gone, marriage is broken, friends estranged, ambitions worn away by immediate needs. Words lined up in our throats for a good whining. Grief seemed like an endless river, the only immortal flow of life. After losing a land and then giving up a tongue, we stopped talking of grief. Smiles began to brighten our faces. We laughed a lot at our own mess. Things become beautiful. Even hailstones in the strawberry fields. Thank you.
Sadie and Maud by Gwendolyn Brooks. Maud went to college. Sadie stayed at home. Sadie scrapes life with a fine tooth comb. She didn't leave a tangle in her comb. Found every strand. Sadie was one of the livingest chits in all the land. Sadie bore 2 babies under her maiden name. Maud and Ma and Papa nearly died of shame. When Sadie said her last so long, her girls struck out from home. Sadie had left as heritage her fine tooth comb. Maud, who went to college, is a thin brown mouse. She is living all alone in this old house. Thank you.
The Moon Now Rises to Her Absolute Rule by Henry David Thoreau. The moon now rises to her absolute rule, and the husbandman and hunter acknowledge her for their mistress. Asters and golden reign in the fields, and the life everlasting withers not. The fields are reaped and shorn of their pride, but an inward verdure still crowns them. The thistle scatters its down on the pool, and yellow leaves clothe the river, and naught disturbs the serious life of men. But behind the sheaves and under the sod, there lurks a ripe fruit which the reapers have not gathered. The true harvest of the year, the boreal fruit which it bears forever, with fondness annually watering and maturing it. But man never severs the stalk which bears this palatable fruit. Thank you.
The Tide Rises, the Tide Falls by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens towards the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Darkness settles on roofs and walls. But the sea in the darkness calls. The little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints in the sands. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Morning breaks. The steeds in their stalls stamp and neigh as the hostler calls. The day returns, but never more returns the traveler to the shore. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Thank you.
The Arrow and the Song by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where, for so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend.
The Farmer by W.D. Earhart. Each day I go into the fields to see what is growing and what remains to be done. It is always the same thing. Nothing is growing. Everything needs to be done. Plow, harrow, disc, water, pray till my bones ache and hands rub blood raw with honest labor. All that grows is the slow, intransigent intensity of need. I have sown my seed on soil guaranteed by poverty to fail, but I don't complain, except a passerby who asks me why I work such barren earth. They would not understand me if I stooped to lift a rock and hold it like a child, or laughed, or told them it is their poverty I labor to relieve. For them, I complain. A farmer of dreams knows how to pretend. A farmer of dreams knows what it means to be patient. Each day, I go into the fields.
By Tony Hoagland. Don't take it personal, they said, but I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain. And I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy, the most simple-minded of possible responses. The government reminded me of my father, with its deafness and its laws. And the weather reminded me of my mom, with her tropical squalls. Enjoy it while you can, they said of happiness. Think first, they said of talk. Get over it, they said at the School of Broken Hearts. But I couldn't, and I didn't. And I don't believe in the clean break. I believe in the compound fracture served with the sauce of dirty regret. I believe in saying it all and taking it all back, and saying it again for good measure, while the air fills up with, I'm sorry's, like wheeling birds and the trees look seasick in the wind. Oh life, can you blame me for making a scene? You were that yellow caboose, the moon disappearing over a ridge of cloud. I was the dog chained in some fool's backyard, barking and barking, trying to convince everything else to take it personal too. Thank you.
Light, Shining Out of Darkness by William Cowper. 1. God moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. 2. Deep and unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs and works his sovereign will. 3. Ye fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds ye so much dread are big with mercy and shall break in blessings on your head. 4. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. 5. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. 6. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make it plain. Thank you.
Bleeding Heart by Carmen Jimenez Smith. My heart is bleeding. It bleeds upward and fills my mouth up with salt. It bleeds because of a city in ruins. The chair, still warm from sister's body, because it will all be irreproducible. My heart bleeds because of baby bear not finding mama bear, and it bleeds to the tips of my fingers like I painted my nails crimson. Sometimes my heart bleeds so much I am a raisin. It bleeds until I am a quivering, ragged clot. Bleeds at the ending with the heroine and her sunken cancer eyes. At the ending with the plaintive flute over smoke-choked killing fields. I'm bleeding a river of blood right now, and it's wearing a culvert in me for the blood. My heart rises up in me, becomes the cork of me, and I choke on it. I'm bleeding for you and for me and for the tiny babies and the IED blown leg. It bleeds because I'm made that way, all filled up with blood. My sloppy heart a sponge filled with blood made to squeeze onto any circumstance. And because it is mine, it will always bleed. My heart bled today. It bled onto the streets and the steps of City Hall. It bled in the pizza parlor with the useless jukebox. I've got so much blood to give inside and outside of any milieu. Even for a bad zoning decision. I'll bleed so much, you'll be bleeding. All of us bleeding in and out like it's breathing. Or kissing. And because it is righteous and terrible and red.
Mrs. Caldera's House of Things by Gregory Janikian. You are sitting in Mrs. Caldera's kitchen, You were sipping a glass of lemonade and trying not to be too curious about the box of plastic hummingbirds behind you, the tray of tineless forks at your elbow. You've heard about the back room, where no one else has ever gone, and whatever enters remains. Refrigerator doors, fuse coils, mower blades, milk bottles, pistons, gears. You never know, she says, rummaging through a cedar chest of recipes, when something will come of use. There is a vase of pencil tips on the table, a bowl full of miniature wheels and axles. Upstairs where her children slept, the doors will not close, the stacks of magazines are burgeoning. There's snowshoes and lampshades, bed springs and picture tubes, and boxes of irreducibles. You imagine the headline in the Literalist Express, House Founders Under Weight of Past. But Mrs. Caldera is baking cookies. She is humming a song from childhood. Her arms are heavy and strong. They have held babies, a husband, tractor parts, and gas tanks. What have they not found a place for? It is getting dark. You have sat for a long time. If you move, you feel something will be disturbed. There is room enough only for your body. Stay a while, Mrs. Caldera says, and never have you felt so valuable. Thank you.
The World is Too Much With Us by William Wordsworth. The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending. We lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon, this sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not, great God! I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasantly, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. Thank you.
Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill. For the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
Every Single Day by John Straley. Suppose I said the word springtime, and I wrote the words King Salmon on a piece of paper and mailed it to you. When you opened it, would you remember that afternoon we spent together in the yellow boat when the early whales were feeding and we caught our first fish of the year? Or would you remember that time off Cape Flattery when you were a little girl, your father smoking, telling stories as he ran the boat? Then the tug and zing of that very first fish spooling off into the gray-green world. You laughing and brushing back your hair before setting the hook. I know I am hard to understand sometimes, particularly when you are standing at the post office with only a piece of paper saying King Salmon on it. But just think of it as a promissory note, and that electric tug, that thrill, pulling your mind into deep water, is how I feel about you every single day. Thank you.
Cartoon Physics, Part 1, by Nick Flynn. Children under, say, 10 shouldn't know that the universe is ever expanding, inexorably pushing into the vacuum, galaxies swallowed by galaxies, whole solar systems collapsing. All of it acted out in silence. At 10, we are still learning the rules of cartoon animation, that if a man draws a door in a rock, only he can pass through it. Anyone else who tries will crash into the rock. 10-year-olds should stick with burning houses, car wrecks, ships going down, earthbound, tangible disasters, arenas where they can be heroes. You can run back into a burning house. Sinking ships have lifeboats. The trucks will come with their ladders. If you jump, you will be saved. A child places her hand on the roof of a school bus and drives across a city of sand. She knows the exact spot it will skid, at which point the bridge will give, who will swim to safety, and who will be pulled under by sharks. She will learn that if a man runs off the edge of a cliff, he will not fall until he notices his mistake.
September 1918 by Amy Lowell. This afternoon was the color of water falling through sunlight. The trees glittered with the tumbling of leaves. The sidewalk shone like alleys of dropped maple leaves, and the houses ran along them, laughing out of square, open windows. Under a tree in the park, two little boys lying flat on their faces were carefully gathering red berries to put in a pasteboard box. Someday there will be no war. Then I shall take out this afternoon and turn it in my fingers and remark the sweet taste of it upon my palate and note the crisp variety of its flights of leaves. Today I can only gather it and put it into my pocket, for I have time for nothing but the endeavor to balance myself upon a broken world. Thank you.
Her Head by Joan Marie. Near Ekwuvukeni in Natal, South Africa, a woman carries water on her head. After a year of drought, when 1 child in 3 is at risk of death, she returns from a distant well, carrying water on her head. The pumpkins are gone, the tomatoes withered, yet the woman carries water on her head. The cattle corrals are empty, the goats gaunt, no milk now for children, but she is carrying water on her head. The engineers have reversed the river. Those with power can keep their power, but one woman is carrying water on her head. In the homelands where the dusty crowds watch the empty roads for water trucks, one woman trusts herself with treasure and carries water on her head. The sun does not dissuade her, not the dried earth that blows against her as she carries the water on her head. In a huge and dirty pail with an idle handle resting on a narrow can, this woman is carrying water on her head. This woman who girds her neck with safety pins, this one who carries water on her head, trusts her own head to bring to her people what they need now, between life and death. She is carrying them water on her head.
Poor Angels by Edward Hirsch. At this hour, the soul floats weightlessly through the city streets, speechless and invisible, astonished by the smoky blend of grays and gold seeping out of the air, the dark halftones of dusk suddenly filling the urban sky, while the body sits listlessly by the window, sullen and heavy, too exhausted to move, too weary to stand up or to lie down. At this hour, the soul is like a yellow wing slipping through the treetops, a little ecstatic cloud hovering over the sidewalks, calling out to the approaching night, "Amaze me, amaze me," while the body sits glumly by the window, listening to the clear summons of the dead, transparent as glass, clairvoyant as crystal. Some nights, it is almost ready to join them. Oh, this is a strange, unlikely tethering, a furious grafting of the quick and the slow. When the soul flies up, the body sinks down, and all night, locked in the same cramped room, they go on quarreling, stubbornly threatening to leave each other, wordlessly filling the air with the sound of a low internal burning. How long can this bewildering marriage last? At midnight, the soul dreams of a small fire of stars flaming on the other side of the sky, but the body stares into an empty night sheen, a hollow-eyed darkness. Poor, luckless angels, feverish old loves, don't separate yet. Let what rises live with what descends. Thank you.
Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream to the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and trade winds soft through sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn bright lawn, and names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on the nightmare scream. His feet are tied and his wings are clipped, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown, but longed for still, and it can be heard, and his tune can be heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
El Olvido by Judith Ortiz Coffer. It is a dangerous thing to forget the climate of your birthplace, to choke out the voices of dead relatives when in dreams they call you by your secret name. It is dangerous to spurn the clothes you were born to wear for the sake of fashion. Dangerous to use weapons and sharp instruments you are not familiar with. Dangerous to disdain the plaster saints before which your mother kneels, praying with embarrassing fervor that you survive in the place you have chosen to live. A bare, cold room, no pictures on the walls. A forgetting place where she fears you will die of loneliness and exposure. Jesus, Maria y José, she says. El olvido is a dangerous thing. Thank you.
The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. Lo, it is gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they that come and go at the bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings invisible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the self-same spot, and much of madness, and more of sin and horror, the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes, with mortal pangs the minds become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm. And the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. Thank you.
How about that? So our runner-up for the Los Angeles County Finals of the Poetry Out Loud contest in 2017 is Jillian Morris. And our winner is Sanima Diaz.
My name is Sanemi Diaz. I am from Milliken High School. I feel absolutely amazing. I am honored to win this competition. Honestly, I worked so hard and everybody did so well, and I'm just glad that this was the outcome. So, thank you.